Staff sickness and a sharp increase in patients, the perfect pandemic storm for the NHS.
Just ringing to see if one of your beds is ready yet for one of our patients.
Stretched resources leave hospitals worried they'll reach a point where there's just not enough staff to care for patients.
At present, we're managing. I don't know how long we can manage as we are at present.
That's a worry, right?
It is a worry.
Also tonight, a surge in travel bookings after testing rules were relaxed again. Protests continue in Australia as Novak Djokovic finally breaks his silence as the mystery over his visa deepens. And
I ain't building no chapel.
Yeah, you.
Not only ain't building no chapel, I'm taking off.
saying goodbye to a legend and pioneer both on and off screen. We look back at the life and work of Sidney Poitier.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. There was more alarming evidence today of the huge impact the Omicron outbreak is having on England's hospitals. COVID-related staff absences have trebled since the start of December, with the Royal College of Nursing warning the situation isn't safe. It's being made worse as many hospitals are struggling to free up beds. One of those is New Cross Hospital in Wolverhampton. Our health editor Emily Morgan was invited inside to see the issues that staff there are facing. Here's her special Frontline Report.
No one thought they were immune. It was only a matter of time. The Omicron wave has hit the West Midlands, and New Cross Hospital in Wolverhampton is treating its victims.
The younger patients predominantly that are coming through to COVID wards are the ones who have not been vaccinated.
There were 27 patients last week. Now there are 100, and ward space is at a premium.
In the last week we have seen a sharp increase in the numbers. So while we had only one ward looking after COVID patients, the Trust had to open up more than one ward.
But it's not just the number of COVID patients that's causing the problem, it's the indirect effect of COVID that means places like this are struggling. From staff sickness to bed shortages to dealing with the backlog, it's a multitude of reasons which are not going away.
Ringing to see if one of your beds is ready yet for one of our patients.
On the acute ward, Rashpal is used to juggling bed space.
How many patients have you got waiting?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's about 26 at the moment.
26 patients waiting
from
to come up here from A&E.
What she's not so used to is having to do this with 11% of her colleagues across the hospital either off sick or isolating.
So you're not operating full staff?
No, we were short today, but we've managed to sort it out, and people have come in to help us today.
You've called people in today?
Yeah.
In fact, COVID-related staff absences more than tripled in the last month in England, rising from just over 11,000 to more than 39,000. 16% of hospital beds were taken up by patients staying for more than 3 weeks, adding to pressures on bed capacity, which, not including critical care, were at 91% during the same time.
2 of the patients cannot be taken by Athol today due to extreme staff sickness.
In her third meeting of the day, Louise is trying to discharge dozens of patients into care homes, but half of them in the area are closed because of COVID.
We have 131 patients in the Trust who are medically fit for discharge. We're unable to discharge them safely into the community.
So you're a bit like a balloon at the moment. You are filling up from the bottom. You're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Do you think at some point you're going to burst?
At present, we're managing. I don't know how long we can manage as we are at present.
This hospital hopes it won't need the army to help out. It's doing all it can to avoid it, but nothing, of course, is guaranteed. Emily Morgan, ITV News in Wolverhampton.
Well, it's not just hospitals struggling to cope. Public services across Northamptonshire have declared a major incident because of a severe shortage of staff. Our correspondent Ben Chapman is outside Northampton General Hospital for us tonight. Ben, why are they doing this?
Well, in the last week here, hospital admissions with COVID have gone up by 45%. At the same time, nearly 1 in 10 hospital staff is off work. But that pressure is now being felt by other public services here too. There are problems discharging patients into care homes. 1 in 10 police and fire staff are also now off work. And the authorities here say all of that adds up to a major incident across the whole system. Now, they say that by declaring a major incident, services will be able to work more closely together. They'll be able to share resources. We might see firefighters driving ambulances, for example. Now, they say the public shouldn't be overly concerned. They say that services coming together in this way should give people confidence, but it is yet another sign of just how much pressure Omicron is exerting across all of these key public services now, pressure which is expected to intensify in the next couple of weeks.
OK, Ben, thanks very much. Welsh First Minister Mark Drakeford has accused Boris Johnson of not doing enough to protect people from coronavirus, saying England is a global outlier. Mr Drakeford made the comments as he announced COVID restrictions in Wales won't be relaxed. Hospital admissions there are at their highest since last March, and he said Wales had not yet reached the peak of the Omicron wave. Travel restrictions are being eased across the UK, though, and one travel boss has told ITV News holiday sales are phenomenal. Here's our consumer editor, Chris Troy, on the new rules and what they mean.
So you're off to South Africa?
Very good news, thank you.
For 2 years they held off. Now with travel rules easing, these customers are finally heading for the sun. New figures we have from the travel trade today show they're part of what's become a booking surge.
Do you think today's change of rules will make a big difference in terms of customer confidence?
Our holiday this year was a day trip on a steam train. That was our summer holiday. There's no point in taking chances. Now that things are opening up, people are so grateful, so thankful that I think you will have a big burst of bookings.
From today, double-jabbed travellers to the UK no longer need a pre-flight COVID test. And from Sunday, they won't need a PCR result after arrival here, only a cheaper lateral flow. Major travel firms have told us bookings are up above 100% since the test rules announcement.
We've seen phenomenal booking levels. Our bookings improved by over 130%. The fact that the restrictions have been lifted in January is a really great time for us. It's traditionally the busiest time of the year for travel businesses.
Stansted Airport today, now planning for a much busier holiday season. Airport said travel tests designed to keep Omicron out were pointless once the strain became dominant in the UK.
You can see behind me the island of Poros.
Currently researching overseas, this holiday expert warns travellers to remain vigilant, but to expect bargains.
We still need to be aware of all the entry requirements for going to our destination. I've been seeing on package holiday sites savings of around 30%, 40% compared to prices that they've had recently.
And heading on holiday, a family of 4 could now save more than £300 thanks to these testing changes, as at last sales are going in the right direction for this battered industry. Chris Choi, ITV News.
And for all the details of the rules for travelling abroad and what tests you need on your return, head to our website, itv.com/news. Kazakhstan's president has authorised security forces to shoot to kill protesters who've been demonstrating against the government there. Dozens have been killed in the protests, which began after a sharp increase in fuel prices, but soon turned into violent demonstrations against the authoritarian state. The row over renovations to the Prime Minister's Downing Street flat deepened today. Labour called for an investigation into whether Tory donor Lord Brownlow was given privileged access to ministers in return for making a payment. Our political correspondent Daniel Hewitt is at Downing Street for us. Daniel, firstly, can you remind us what all of this is about?
Well, Charlene, not many people can message a friend and ask for thousands of pounds to help refurbish their home with designer furnishings. But that is exactly what Boris Johnson did in November last year when he messaged the Tory donor Lord Brownlow asking for help to pay for 11 Downing Street. The question now being asked is whether the content of their messages amount to cash for access, or as Labour today are accusing, corruption. Why? Well, those WhatsApp messages where they talk about payments also include a line where Boris Johnson says he'll take action on Lord Brownlow's Great Exhibition plan. Now, this was in reference to a pet project that Lord Brownlow was trying to get off the ground to hold a cultural festival in Britain. We now know that 6 weeks after those messages were exchanged, Lord Brownlow was given a meeting with the then Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden to discuss his ideas. Now, Labour say if Lord Brownlow handed money to the Prime Minister, was then given access to a government minister to talk about his ideas, well, that is, in their words, corruption pure and simple. Number 10, of course, flatly deny this. They say this meeting was set up in the usual channels, that no rules were broken, and that in the end, the government decided not to go ahead with Lord Brownlow's project. With all of this and continuing investigations into parties here in 2020, 2022 has not been the fresh start that Boris Johnson wanted.
Daniel, thanks very much. Still to come on the ITV Evening News, the ITV drama giving fresh hope for those calling for a Hillsborough law, and tributes to the trailblazer of cinema, Sidney Poitier. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. Former Prime Ministers Theresa May and Gordon Brown have given their support to a so-called Hillsborough law to ensure bereaved families get justice. An ITV drama about Hillsborough campaigner Anne Williams, which aired this week, has prompted renewed calls for action. The new law would ensure fairer treatment for the loved ones of those who die in tragedies. Our North of England reporter Hannah Miller has more.
Sergeant, I have been led to believe for a year that my son died in that crush in the Pent.
A drama watched by millions that tells of one woman's fight for justice. The real-life story of activist Anne Williams capturing the horror of losing her son at Hillsborough and the hurt of the cover-up that followed. Anne didn't live to see the day that her son's death was recorded as unlawful killing after a fight that went on for 27 years. But today, those she campaigned alongside came together to try to stop others going through the same struggle.
We had obstacles every step of the way, and we had to pay for everything that we went forward with. The families had to pay for. What a disgrace. That should never happen.
In the aftermath of a major disaster like Hillsborough, the new law would give families access to funding for legal representation and force police officers and public officials to proactively tell the truth. It draws on the conclusions of a report commissioned by former Prime Minister Theresa May nearly 6 years ago, and now supporters are keen to build momentum.
For every Anne Williams, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of parents going through the same. Hillsborough, Grenfell, contaminated blood, you could reel off a whole number of injustices that just go on and on for years because the system is stacked against ordinary families seeking the truth.
Kevin, how many times do you have to be told? You're too young.
Even members of the cast today backed the calls for change.
I think a lot of people felt a righteous anger watching it as well as being moved by. I think it's made a lot of people sort of sit back up again and realise that some things do have to change.
This drama has exposed a struggle faced by families ripped apart by the long pursuit of justice, as well as the tragedy of their loss. Hannah Miller, ITV News.
Manchester City player Benjamin Mendy has been freed on bail ahead of his trial for rape charges. The 27-year-old had been in custody since August last year. Our sports reporter Amy Lewis has joined us in the studio. Amy, what happened in court?
Well, this is the fourth time that he's actually applied to be granted bail, and he was successful today in that attempt at a private hearing. So after 134 days in custody, he is now heading home. Cameras filmed him leaving the courthouse in his prison uniform. He was arrested back in August and charged with 7 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault between October 2020 and last August. Who is he? Well, He a World Cup winner with France, and he's also a defender with Manchester City. He joined the club in 2017 from Monaco for £52 million. At the time, that was a record fee for a defender. Manchester City suspended him back in August when he was charged pending this court case. His court case was due to start later this month. Now it's been put back to June at the earliest.
OK, Amy, thank you. A 13-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder following the death of a man in West London. 46-year-old Darius Wolosh was found stabbed to death in the early hours of Tuesday morning. And the Labour MP, Jack Dromey, has died. His family said the 73-year-old, who represented Birmingham Erdington, died suddenly. Novak Djokovic has thanked his fans for their support as he spends another day in a quarantine hotel in Melbourne. It came as a second Australian Open player had their visa cancelled over their vaccine status. And as our sports editor Steve Scott reports, there are growing questions about the role Australian tennis authorities have played in the row.
As Novak Djokovic endured a second full day at a rundown detention hotel, outside, fans attempted to lift his spirits on what is Serbia's Christmas Day. Djokovic finally broke his silence, posting, "Thank you to people around the world for your continuous support. I can feel it and it is greatly appreciated." At Serbia's parliament, the world number one's parents led a rally as this controversy moves from sporting saga to diplomatic incident.
He will win if he stays. It just depends if they are going to let him to play or not. We'll see. We have to wait.
Yesterday, they claimed Djokovic was effectively a prisoner, a charge given short shrift by the Australian government.
Mr. Djokovic is not being held captive in Australia. He is free to leave at any time that he chooses.
Djokovic hasn't revealed his vaccination status, but it's believed he travelled to Melbourne in the belief a recent COVID infection gave him a medical exemption. But today it emerged in November, the health minister told Tennis Australia that people who contracted COVID-19 within the past 6 months, but who hadn't had the required doses of recognised vaccines, are not considered fully vaccinated. However, in an email recently to overseas players, Tennis Australia seemed to suggest the opposite. It read, "You may be eligible for a temporary medical exemption if you have recently been infected." Czech player Renata Voráková has now also been detained and her visa cancelled. She'd already been in Australia for a month. Djokovic faces 2 more days before he can stretch his legs. On Monday, a court will decide whether that will be in Australia or somewhere else. Steve Scott, ITV News.
Heavy snow has caused travel disruption in parts of the UK. In Cumbria and County Durham, vehicles were left stranded overnight and the A66 Transpennine route was closed. The Met Office has issued 2 yellow weather warnings for ice tonight from central Scotland to Manchester and in parts of southern England and Wales. And we end tonight with tributes to Sir Sidney Poitier, the pioneering actor who paved the way for generations of black film stars. He was the first black actor to win a Best Actor Oscar for Lilies of the Field back in 1964. He spoke then of the long journey to get to that moment, and he went on to make more groundbreaking movies which tackled segregation and prejudice, including In the Heat of the Night and To Sir with Love. Sir Sidney died last night at the age of 94. Our arts editor, Nina Nanar, looks back at his trailblazing life and work.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
He was an extraordinary presence.
You and your whole lousy generation believes the way it was for you is the way it's got to be.
A matinee idol.
She's only known me for 10 days, so she can't tell you when I'm blushing.
An actor whose visibility in Hollywood would be profound and influential.
I ain't building no chapel.
Yeah, you. In 1964, Sidney Poitier became the first black man to win a Best Actor Oscar, playing a handyman in Lilies of the Field.
The winner is Sidney Poitier.
Quietly dignified, he was all too aware of the history he was creating.
It is a long journey to this moment.
Decades later, those he inspired would pay tribute.
I'll always be following in your footsteps. There's nothing I would rather do, sir. Nothing I would rather do.
Raised in the Bahamas, Poitier came to Hollywood at a time when black actors were often given bit parts. He began that journey to lead man. In 1958's The Defiant Ones, both he and fellow lead Tony Curtis would get Oscar nominations, but it would be in the 60s when Poitier became a top box office draw.
I'm a police officer.
His roles would often confront racism head-on. In the heat of the night, his character met bigotry with controlled anger and reason.
You aren't taking me anywhere, you dig? You're holding the wrong man.
In To Sir with Love, he was the black teacher trying to win over hostile pupils in inner-city London.
Those kids are devils incarnate, huh?
This is John.
And in the same year, 1967, came another milestone as he was cast as part of an interracial couple, still a rarity in mainstream Hollywood then.
You ought to sit down before you fall down, I mean.
What he achieved was recognised in his lifetime, but Sidney Poitier's powerful legacy will endure on screen and off.
The incredible Sir Sidney Poitier, who's died at the age of 94. An absolute legend. Right, that's all from us for now. Raggy will be here with the news at the later time of 10:20 tonight, but from everybody on the team, bye-bye.